Steven Spielberg was only 26 when he filmed Jaws on July 15, 1974. A photographer captured something that Universal Pictures tried to hide for decades. The photo shows what really happened during the beach attack scene. During test screening, 13 viewers fainted and 2 started vomiting. The studio panicked and buried the footage, but one crew member kept the evidence. When it surfaced in 2018, film experts couldn't believe their eyes. The mechanical shark wasn't the problem. What they filmed that day was too real for audiences. It all started by accident. In 1973, Richard Zanuck and David Brown, 2 Hollywood producers, found a story that would change everything. Brown picked up a copy of Cosmopolitan magazine, which his wife Helen edited. Inside, a short card described an unpublished novel called Jaws. The final line said, "Might make a good movie." That small line was enough. Brown shared it with Zanuck. They both read the manuscript. In one night, the next morning, they couldn't stop talking about it. They thought it was the most exciting story they had ever read. Without wasting time, they decided to buy the rights. Later, Brown admitted he moved to fast. If they had read the book a second time, they might have realized how hard it would be to turn it into a film. But by then, it was too late. They were all in. Universal Pictures agreed to back them. The studio paid $175,000 for the rights even before the book came out. That's over $1.2 million in today's money. It was a huge risk. All they had was a promising story and 2 excited producers. But the timing worked. When the book was published in February 1974, it became a massive hit. The hardback stayed on bestseller lists for 44 weeks. The paperback sold millions. If Universal had waited, they would have a bidding war. Instead, they got it cheap. Now came the harder part. Finding the right director. Steven Spielberg had just finished the Sugarland Express. He was young, only 26, and already under contract, but hadn't want to do Jaws. He worried it would trap him. A few years earlier, Hamad Duel, a movie about a man being hunted by a truck. He feared people would label him Shark Guy. He tried to leave Heaven, looked at other films. One was called Lucky Lady, but Universal would let him go. He was still under contract, and they knew what he could do, so they told him to stay, and headed. Casting was a mess. Spielberg wanted Jon Voight to play Hooper, but Richard Dreyfuss took the role. On January 3, 1974, he called Spielberg out of the blue. Hewitt, happy with his own work in The Apprenticeship of Judy Kravitz, and decided to jump on board. Filming was just 4 months away. For Quint, Spielberg wanted Lee Marvin or Sterling Hayden. Both said no. That's how Robert Shaw got the role. He nailed it. But on set, he clashed with Dreyfuss constantly. Shaw drank too much. Dreyfuss was cocky. They annoyed each other. Still, their real-life tension added something special to their scenes. Everything felt trust. Universal wanted to ride the wave of the book's success. They pushed the film forward. Spielberg started shooting on May 2, 1974. The script wasn't finished. The mechanical sharks didn't work. The budget exploded, climbing from $3.5 million to $9 million. The schedule stretched from 55 days to 159. Spielberg, still only 26, felt he still feared being boxed in. He wanted out. But producer David Brown talked him down. He told Spielberg that if he finished Jaws, he could make anything after. That promise kept him going. Spielberg didn't just want fear, he wanted laughs, too. He didn't see Jaws as a pure horror film. He didn't want it to be a grim hunt in the sea. He wanted real people, real tension, and moments of humor. To help with that, heckled Carl Gottlieb was a comedy writer who had worked on The Odd Couple. On April 3, 1974, Spielberg sent him the script. Gottlieb wrote back with 3 pages of suggestions. Spielberg loved it. He showed the notes to the producers. A few days later, the 4 of them met at the Hotel Bel Air. By next week, Gottlieb was flying to Boston with Spielberg. He was supposed to help cast locals, but Spielberg had a bigger plan. He needed help fixing this script. Gottlieb got to work fast. He focused on character. He made them feel human. One of his most famous touches came during a dinner scene. Brody, Hooper, and Quint start comparing scars. That moment came out of one of Gottlieb's late-night dinners with the cast. They improvised it. The shark kept breaking down. It barely worked. So, that film leaned harder on the actors. Their dialogue carried the scenes. The line, "You're going to need a bigger boat," wasn't even in the script. It was made up on the spot, but it became legendary. Gott's role grew quickly. He was hired for a 1-week rewrite starting April 27. He stayed for 9 weeks. Each night he had dinner with Spielberg and the cast. They talked about what scenes to shoot next. Ideas came out of Thosmio's lines were written on the fly. One big change was cutting the affair from the book. In the novel, Brody's wife has a fling with Hooper. But when Gottlieb saw the actors together, he knew it wouldn't work. He said, "We're not going to show her cuckolding Brody with this tweet." So the affair was gone. He also rewrote Hooper, his character around Richard Dreyfuss. In some ways, Hooper became a stand-in for Spielberg himself. a curious, smart, slightly awkward outsider. That change gave the film more heart. On May 2, 1974, a young and determined Steven Spielberg stood at the edge of the Atlantic Ocean. He had only directed one feature film before, but this time, he had something bigger in mind. Spielberg gave a bold call. He chose to film Jaws out at sea instead of inside a tank. Everyone warned him not to. Studios hated the idea, but Spielberg believed real water, real skies, and real movement were the only way to make it feel alive. The team picked Martha's Vineyard as their battleground. It was calm and beautiful on the surface, but a nightmare to shoot in. To make them a shark work, they needed aspect deep enough for it to swim, but shallow enough to anchor equipment. They settled on a bizarre patch 10 to 12 mi offshore that was only 30 feet deep. Spielberg later called it the worst place in the world to shoot a movie. Nature did not care about their sea. The sea changed its mood by the hour. One moment, they were ready to roll. The next, the current would shift and push the boats out of alignment. Crews had to stop everything and reset the entire setup. By then, the sun had moved. Shots were ruined. Some days they get just 2 usable takes. The cast and crew were miserable. The sun burned their skin. The rocking waves made them sick. Everyone was exhausted. And then Thor were the locals. At first, they were excited to see Hollywood in town, but as the delay stretched on, their patience ran dry. One night, someone event threw fish guts at Spielberg's house. Then came the sharks, no real ones, the mechanical ones, nicknamed Bruce, after production designer Joe Alves, built 3 of them, one for swimming on a track, 2 others to film from different sides. They were huge, each about 25 feet long. Spielberg had hoped they'd save the movie. Instead, they nearly sunk it. The very first time they lowered one into the ocean, it sank straight to the bottom. Divers had to fish it out. From there, things only got worse. Salt water corroded the machinery. Rubber skin soaked up water and warped. Movements became jerky and word. One day, the shark looked menacing. The next it looked like a kid's broken toy. Spielberg was furious. At one point, he shouted, "I'd like to kill this shark." The crew spent hours repairing the beasts. Some days they couldn't shoot anything at all. Piece kept falling off. Sometimes entire sharks disappeared below the waves, and to be pulled back up by divers, everyone started to panic. The budget was exploding. So was the schedule. The film was supposed to cost $3.50 million and finish in 55 days. That was Zeppelin. 2 months in, they were already $2 million over. They were 49 days late. Shooting didn't stop until October 6th. That was day 159. The final budget landed somewhere between 9 and 12 million. Spielberg thought his career was over. Studio executives were terrified. Crew members started mocking the whole production. Some wore t-shirts that said Shark 1, Spielberg 0. Others called the movie flaws. Spielberg was so scared of being thrown into the ocean on the final day that he snuck off set and flew back to LA early. But there was another battle happening on the boat. Actor Robert Shaw, who played Quint, didn't get along with Richard Dreyfuss, who played Hooper. Shaw was old school, a serious method actor. Dreyfuss was younger, more casual, and full of nerves. Shaw would insult him constantly, calling him names and mocking his performance. Once he grabbed Dreyfuss by the throat. Another time, he shot a fire extinguisher at him. Shaw also drank heavily. One night, he got too drunk to film the big USS Indianapolis B. He begged for another try the next day. Spielberg gave it to him. That time, Shaw nailed it in one perfect take. Dreyfuss wasn't doing much better. He had panic attacks and felt trapped. He worried the movie would flop and his career would end. Roy Scheider, who played Brody, tried to stay neutral, but the tension affected everyone. Spielberg later said Jaws was the hardest shoot of his life. Then something strange happened. Because the shark barely worked, Spielberg had to get creative. He stopped showing it. Instead, he hinted at it. He used underwater shots from the shark's point of view. He showed yellow barrels skimming the ski. He let the audience hear it before they ever saw it. That's where John Williams stepped in. Williams created a simple Twody theme, just INDF, repeating over and over. When Spielberg first heard it, he laughed. He thought it was a joke. But Williams explained it was meant to feel primal, like a pulse in the water. He recorded 47 versions of that theme, each one designed to control how scared the audience would feel. Sometimes it was low and quiet, other times it pounded fast and loud. The shark only appears on screen for about 4 minutes, but that's all it needed. The mystery made it terrifying when it finally burst out off the water near the end. It was shocking. The build-up had worked. The broken mockings forced Spielberg to make some of things smarter. Then there were a few. The original Alex Kintner death scene in Jaws was supposed to be unforgettable. It was meant to be terrifying, brutal, and painful. Realistic. On July 15, 1974, the crew gathered at Catama Bay in Martha's Vineyard to film what they thought would be the most shocking moment in the movie. The scene would show a great white shark attacking a young boy on a raft in full gory detail. But what they shot that day was so intense, it never made it into the final cut. 11-year-old Jeffrey Voorhees played Alex Kintner in the original plan. He was floating calmly on a yellow raft, completely unaware of the danger right beneath him. Suddenly, the massive mechanical shark built to be 25 feet long and weighing over 1.5 tons would rise out of the water and lung toward him. The shark was called Bruce, and it needed a crew of 15 people to operate it. They had designed it, Tolipi, with such power that it would soak the camera crew with sea or every time it burst from the bay. The raft was supposed to be crushed in the shark. With Alex still on it, Bruce would thrash violently from side to side, throwing gallons of blood into the water. The crew had prepared an entire system of pressurized blood packs that would explode on cue, sending red liquid high into the air. The sea would turn crimson to make it even more disturbing. They had built a lifelike dummy of Alex. It had movable limbs, a torso filled with fake organs, and was designed to tear apart like a real body. Bruce was programmed to rip through it. Limbs would separate, flesh would float, organs would bob to the surface. The screams would be sharp and horrifying, and the sound team made it worse, with layers of cracking bones and ripping tissue. It was pure nightmare fuel. One photo captured this moment before it wasn't released for decades. In 2018, a rare black and white imageticon by set photographer it was dated July 15, 1974. At exactly 2:37 p.m. The image shows Bruce with his jaws wide open, just inches from the dummy on the raft. The shark's head fills the frame, and Thedemi's small figure seems frozen into air. Even without color, the photo looked terrifying. The shark's rough skin, cold, glassy eyes, and endless rows of teeth were clear. The dummy arms stretched out as if bracing for death. It was haunting. The photo came from the private stash of a crew member who worked on the second unit. It was found years later, tucked in a box of forgotten memorabilia. Film experts immediately recognized its importance. It wasn't just a production photo. It was a glimpse at the most graphic idea Spielberg never used. The photo capturettes full detail of Bruce, the machinette that had caused chaos during the shoot. It proved how far the special effects team had gone. Bob, Matty, and his crew had spent months perfecting that monster. They wanted it to shock people, and it did, but the scene never made it to theaters. On April 26, 1975, at a screening in Dallas, Texas, the audience couldn't handle it. 13 people fainted, vomited in the lobby. Sumaran, out. It was too much. The scene was too intense for a PG rating. The Impa said it would have to be rated R if left in. That would limit ticket sales. Universal didn't want that. They told Spielberg to cut it. Spielberg agreed. He later said that the imagination could scare people more than blood ever could. He believed that leaving things unseen made them more terrifying.